Morning came to Harmony Point with exhausted students stumbling to breakfast. The cafeteria was crowded with beings from dozens of species, all talking about the previous night. Details about the incident were spreading through the station. A group of extremists from the Dracon Sovereignty had tried to plant a bomb in the diplomatic wing. Station security stopped them, but it had been close. Jake sat at a table with Lisa, eating something that was supposed to resemble scrambled eggs. He was so tired that everything seemed slightly unreal. "You're famous," Lisa said, sliding her datapad across the table. Jake looked at the screen. Someone had recorded video of him approaching the Krell cubs during the emergency. The footage showed Jake walking calmly toward 5 snarling predators, speaking to them, watching them sit and take up guard positions. The video had thousands of views already and was spreading across the station network. "Great," Jake muttered. "People are calling you the Krell Whisperer," Lisa said with a grin. "There's a whole discussion thread about how you did it. Some people think you used pheromones. Others think you have some kind of psychic ability. I just talked to them. Jake, nobody just talks to Krell cubs, especially not when they're scared and aggressive." Before Jake could respond, a Zenthari professor approached their table. It was Professor Helen Grant, who taught advanced xenopsychology. She was tall and silver-skinned with 3 arms and deep-set eyes that seemed to see everything. "May I sit?" she asked. Jake nodded, suddenly nervous. Professors usually didn't seek out students in the cafeteria unless something was wrong. Professor Grant folded herself into a chair, her 3 arms moving with elegant coordination. "I watched the video from last night," she said. "I've also been observing the changes in Krell behavior over the past few weeks. I'm curious about your methods." "I don't have methods," Jake said. "I just treated them like I would treat dogs back home." "Dogs," Professor Grant repeated thoughtfully. "Explain," so Jake did. He told her about growing up on a farm in Montana, about his family's work breeding and training German shepherds for search and rescue. He explained how pack dynamics worked, how young dogs needed clear leadership and consistent boundaries, how showing fear or aggression usually made things worse, how calm confidence could turn a troubled dog into a loyal companion. "And you applied these principles to the Krell," Professor Grant said. "I saw the same patterns. They weren't being aggressive because they were mean. They were acting out because they were lost. No structure, no leadership, no purpose. Just 5 kids far from home with no idea how to fit in. Most species don't understand Krell behavior," Professor Grant said. "We see warriors and predators. We react with fear or try to establish dominance through force. Both responses trigger their aggression. They just needed someone who wasn't afraid but also wasn't trying to fight them," Jake said. Professor Grant was quiet for a moment, her 3 hands steepled together. "Would you be willing to present your observations to the Xenopsychology Department? What you've accomplished could change how we approach interspecies youth programs. I'm just a student. You're a student who achieved what our trained counselors could not." "That's worth discussing," Jake agreed, mostly because saying no to a professor seemed like a bad idea. After Professor Grant left, Lisa gave him an amused look. "First you're famous, now you're going to teach professors. What's next?" "Hopefully sleep," Jake said. "I'm exhausted, but sleep would have to wait." When Jake and Lisa returned to floor 7, they found a small crowd gathered in the hallway. Station security officers were there, along with what looked like administrators, and sitting calmly in the middle of everything were the 5 Krell cubs. Vrak saw Jake and immediately stood up. The other cubs followed. They padded over to Jake, ignoring everyone else, and arranged themselves around him in a loose protective formation. One of the administrators, a Zenthari with green-tinted skin, approached carefully. "You're Jake Morrison?" "Yes. I'm Administrator Kyle Bennett. I need to speak with you about the events of last night." They moved to a conference room down the hall. The cubs tried to follow, but Jake told them to wait outside. Vrak looked unhappy about it but obeyed, settling near the door with his pack. Inside the conference room, Kyle got straight to the point. "What you did last night was dangerous and technically violated lockdown protocols. However, it also prevented what could have been a violent incident. The cubs were close to attacking other students. They were scared," Jake said. "Nevertheless, you took a considerable risk. We need to understand how you were able to influence their behavior. The Krell government has been asking difficult questions about why their youth are struggling to adapt. Your success could help answer those questions." Jake repeated his explanation about pack dynamics and leadership. Kyle listened carefully, making notes on his datapad. The Galactic Council has been struggling with youth exchange programs, Kyle said. Many species find it difficult to integrate young individuals from warrior cultures. If your approach could be taught to others, it might solve a significant diplomatic problem. I don't know if it can be taught, Jake said honestly. It's not really a technique. It's just understanding what they need. That understanding is valuable regardless. Would you be willing to continue working with the Cubs? Officially as part of a pilot program? Jake thought about it. What would that involve? Mentoring them, helping them adapt, teaching them how to interact with other species appropriately. You'd receive credit toward your degree and a small stipend. More importantly, you'd be helping create a framework for future programs. It was a lot to take on. Jake was already busy with classes and research. But he thought about Vrak and the others, how they had sat guard all night because he asked them to. They had trusted him. He couldn't abandon them now. Okay, Jake said. I'll do it. Over the following weeks, life on Floor 7 changed dramatically. The Cubs became Jake's constant companions. They attended his classes, sitting quietly in the back. They followed him to the library, to the labs, to the cafeteria. Where Jake went, the pack followed. At first, other students were nervous. But gradually, they realized the Cubs weren't a threat anymore. Not with Jake there. The Cubs still looked like fierce predators, still had claws and teeth that could kill, but they were calm now, controlled. They had found their place in the pack hierarchy, with Jake as their alpha. Jake worked with them on social skills, teaching them to greet other species properly, explaining which behaviors were acceptable and which weren't, showing them how to read body language from beings that didn't have tails or ears. The Cubs learned quickly, eager to please. Vrak was especially dedicated. The big Cub shadowed Jake everywhere, watching and learning. He started greeting other students with a slight nod instead of a snarl. He held doors open for smaller beings. He even attempted to make friends with a Quellan student, though the poor alien nearly fainted from fear at first. The other Cubs followed Vrak's example. Within a month, they had become model students. They helped carry equipment for professors. They assisted with research projects. They volunteered for campus security patrols. The same energy they had once poured into intimidation and chaos now went into being useful members of the community. Other floors started requesting Krell students. The Cubs became ambassadors for their species, showing that warriors could also be gentle, that predators could also protect. Jake's presentation to the Xenopsychology department was attended by over 100 faculty members and administrators. He explained his observations, his methods, his philosophy. He showed videos of the Cubs before and after, the dramatic change in behavior. He answered questions for 2 hours. The department offered him a position as a research assistant. His work with the Cubs became the foundation for new interspecies youth programs across the Galactic Council. Other students began applying his principles with different species with varying success. It turned out Jake had a particular talent, but the basic concepts were sound. The Krell government sent an ambassador to meet Jake. The ambassador was an older warrior, covered in scars with eyes that had seen combat. He looked at Jake for a long time without speaking. "You have given our youth what we could not," the ambassador finally said. "Purpose and direction in a strange place. Honor and respect among species who feared them. This is a gift we will not forget." "I just helped them figure out who they wanted to be," Jake said. "That is everything," the ambassador replied. 6 months after that first night of howling, Jake sat in his room working on an assignment. Vrak was curled up on the floor nearby, dozing. The other Cubs were scattered around the hallway, some studying, some sleeping, all content. There was a knock on the door. Jake opened it to find a new student just arrived on the station. He was human, young, looking lost and overwhelmed. "Hi," the student said nervously. "I'm Danny Cooper. I just got assigned to this floor. Someone told me I should talk to you about the Krell." Jake smiled. "Don't worry about them. They're good kids once you get to know them. Come on, I'll introduce you." He led Danny into the hallway. Vrak woke up and stretched, yawning widely enough to show every tooth. Danny took a step back. "It's okay," Jake said. "Vrak, this is Danny. He's new. Be nice." Vrak approached slowly and dipped his head in greeting. Danny stared. Jake woke up with a stiff neck and a sore back. The floor of the hangar was not comfortable, but he had slept through 6 hours without moving. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the dragon watching him. She was awake and alert. Her eyes were clearer now, not clouded with pain and exhaustion like before.
She had eaten some of the food Jake had left for her and had drunk almost all the water.
These were good signs. "Good morning," Jake said, sitting up slowly. "How are you feeling?" The dragon made a soft rumbling sound. She shifted her body, moving with more strength than she had shown yesterday. Jake took that as a positive response. Lisa arrived an hour later with fresh medical supplies and more food. She checked the dragon's vital signs and smiled. She's improving. Her body temperature is almost normal now, and her hydration levels are much better. Whatever species she is, she's a fighter. "Have you found anything in the records?" Jake asked. Lisa's smile faded. "Not yet, but I'm looking. The problem is that someone has been very careful about covering their tracks. There are gaps in the logs, encrypted files, and deleted entries. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." Jake frowned. "Keep digging. There has to be something." Over the next 2 days, Jake barely left the hangar. He set up a small cot in the corner so he could sleep near the dragon. He brought his tools and worked on small repair jobs while keeping her company. The dragon seemed to appreciate his presence. Whenever he moved too far away, she would make a questioning sound until he came back. On the 3rd day, something remarkable happened. Jake was adjusting one of the heaters when he heard a strange sound behind him. He turned to see the dragon watching him intently. She opened her mouth and a series of clicks, whistles, and low musical notes came out. It was language. She was trying to talk to him. "I'm sorry," Jake said, feeling frustrated. "I don't understand what you're saying." The dragon looked disappointed. Then she did something clever. She lifted one clawed foot and began to draw in the condensation that had formed on the metal floor. Lines appeared, forming symbols that were intricate and beautiful. Jake quickly grabbed his datapad and took pictures of the symbols. "Lisa," he called over his communicator. "Get up here now. I think she's trying to communicate." Lisa arrived and stared at the symbols. "I'll run these through the translation database. If her language is in the galactic records, we should get a match." An hour later, Lisa returned to the hangar. Her face was pale and she was carrying a datapad with trembling hands. "Jake, I know what she is. These symbols are from the Draconis species. They're a protected class under Galactic Council law. They're highly intelligent, they're peaceful, and they're critically endangered. There are only a few thousand of them left in the entire galaxy." Jake felt his stomach twist. "Protected? Then how did she end up locked in a cell on our ship?" "That's not all I found," Lisa said quietly. She handed Jake the datapad. "I finally broke through the encryption on some of the deleted files. 6 weeks ago, the Aurora made an unscheduled stop in the Veiled Nebula region. The captain authorized a cargo transfer, but there's no manifest and no official record of what was transferred." Jake scrolled through the files. "Who authorized it?" "Commander Gregory Holt." Jake's blood ran cold. Holt was the second in command of the Aurora. He was a career officer with an excellent reputation. Everyone respected him. Everyone trusted him. "There's more," Lisa continued. "I found encrypted communications between Holt and someone off the ship. They were discussing prices, meeting locations, and delivery schedules. Jake, he was selling her to black market collectors who wanted an exotic pet or a trophy." Jake felt sick. He looked at the dragon, who was watching their conversation with intelligent eyes. She had been stolen from her home, locked in a cage, and sold like property. And when the deal had fallen through, Holt had simply abandoned her in that freezing cell. "We need to tell Captain Ross," Jake said. "We can't. Not yet." Lisa's voice was firm. "Holt has powerful friends in the military and in the government. If we accuse him without iron-solid proof, he'll bury this entire situation. He'll destroy the evidence, discredit us, and probably get rid of her too. We need more before we can move against him." Jake hated it, but he knew she was right. "Then what do? We keep gathering evidence. I'll keep digging through the files. You stay with her and make sure she's safe. And Jake, we need to be careful. If Holt finds out what we know, we're all in danger." Over the next several days, Jake and Lisa worked in secret. Lisa spent every spare moment searching through ship records, communications logs, and personnel files. She found more evidence of Holt's activities. There were coded messages about exotic cargo. There were financial records showing large deposits into offshore accounts. There were even testimonies from crew members who had noticed strange activities during that stop in the Veiled Nebula. Meanwhile, Jake continued caring for the dragon. He had started calling her Violet in his mind because of her beautiful purple and blue scales. The name felt right somehow. Violet was getting stronger every day. She could walk around the hangar now without difficulty. She could spread her wings, though the space was too small for her to fly. Her pregnancy was clearly advancing. Her belly had grown larger, and Lisa warned that the birth could happen at any time. Jake noticed that Violet was trying harder to communicate. She would draw more symbols on the floor. She would make different sounds and watch Jake's reaction, trying to understand which ones he recognized. Jake brought a translation device from the ship's linguistics department and programmed it with the Draconis language database Lisa had found. The device was not perfect, but it helped. One evening, Jake was sitting next to Violet when she made a series of soft sounds. The translator crackled to life. "Safe here. Thank you." Jake felt his throat tighten. "You're welcome. I'm going to make sure you stay safe." Violet moved closer and gently pressed her large head against Jake's chest. It was a gesture of trust and affection. Jake reached up and carefully touched her scales. They were warm now, not cold like when he had first found her. They were smooth and hard but somehow still felt alive under his fingers. "I won't let anyone hurt you," Jake promised. "I don't care what it costs me." The translator picked up Violet's response. "Good human. Strange human, but good." Jake laughed despite the serious situation. "I'll take that as a compliment." On the 8th day, everything fell apart. Jake was in the hangar, working on his data pad and reviewing the evidence Lisa had collected. Violet was resting nearby, her eyes half closed. The communicator on Jake's belt suddenly buzzed with an emergency signal. "Jake, it's Lisa. Holt knows. I don't know how, but he knows. He's on his way to the hangar with a security team. You have maybe 5 minutes." Jake's heart began to pound. He looked at Violet, who sensed his fear and immediately rose to her feet. Her body language changed. She positioned herself protectively, her wings partially spread, her eyes alert and focused on the door. "We're out of time," Jake told her, "but I'm not letting him take you." Jake ran to the control panel and activated the hangar's emergency lockdown. Heavy blast doors slammed shut over all the entrances. It would not hold Holt forever, but it might buy them some time. 4 minutes later, the pounding started. Fists hammered against the blast doors. Then Holt's voice boomed through the intercom system. "Brennan, open this door immediately. That creature is military property. You are interfering with official business and committing theft." Jake activated the intercom on his end. "Military property? She's a living being, a sentient being with thoughts and feelings, and you left her to die in that cell. I don't have to explain my actions to a mechanic. Open the door now, or I will have you arrested for theft, insubordination, and interfering with a military operation." "Go ahead and try," Jake shot back. His voice was steady even though his hands were shaking. "But first, maybe you should explain to Captain Ross why you've been running black market operations on her ship. Maybe you should explain why you stole a protected species and tried to sell her to collectors." There was a long silence. Jake held his breath. Then Holt's voice came back, quieter and much more dangerous. "You're making a very serious mistake, Brennan. You have no idea what you're dealing with. That thing in there is worth more money than you'll ever see in your lifetime. Do you really want to throw away your career, maybe your life, for an animal?" Jake looked at Violet. She was standing tall and strong, her eyes fixed on the door. She understood that danger was close, but she was not cowering. She was ready to fight if necessary. "She's not an animal," Jake said into the intercom. "She's a person. And yes, I would throw away everything to protect her. 'Cause that's what decent people do." The pounding on the door intensified. Holt was trying to force it open. Jake knew the lockdown would not last much longer. He pulled out his communicator and sent one final message to Lisa. "If this goes wrong, make sure the evidence gets to Captain Ross and to the Galactic Council. Don't let him bury this." Lisa's response came immediately. "Already done. I sent everything 5 minutes ago. Help is coming, Jake, just hold on." The blast door began to groan under the pressure. Holt had brought cutting equipment. They were going to breach the hangar in minutes. Jake stood next to Violet. If they were going to come through that door... Jake's legs felt weak with relief. He reached out and steadied himself against Violet's solid shoulder. The dragon made a questioning sound, her eyes still fixed on the damaged door. "It's okay," Jake told her. "Help is here." The sounds from outside changed. Jake could hear raised voices, the snap of orders being given, and the distinctive click of weapons being secured. The cutting equipment went silent. Then Captain Ross's voice came through the intercom again. "Mr. Brennan, please disengage the lockdown. Commander Holt is in custody." You and your friend are safe now. Jake's hands trembled as he entered the unlock code. The blast doors slowly opened, revealing the scene outside. Captain Ross stood in the corridor with 4 security officers. Commander Holt was on his knees, his hands secured behind his back with magnetic restraints. His face was red with rage. Captain Ross was a tall woman with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had commanded the Aurora for 15 years, and everyone who served under her respected her deeply. Jake had only spoken to her a handful of times in his 5 years on the ship. She was fair but strict, and she did not tolerate dishonesty or corruption. The captain stepped into the hangar, and her eyes widened when she saw Violet. For a long moment she simply stared. Then she spoke quietly, almost to herself. "My God. What have you done, Holt?" Holt struggled against his restraints. "She's just an animal, Captain. A valuable one, yes, but still just cargo. Brennan is the one who broke regulations. He accessed restricted areas, stole military property, and locked down a ship facility." Captain Ross turned to look at Holt. Her expression was colder than Jake had ever seen. "Be silent, Commander. You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly suggest you exercise that right. Captain, you need to understand the financial opportunity here. That creature is worth millions. We could split the profit and no one would ever need to know. Think about what we could do with that money." "Security," Captain Ross said calmly. "If the commander speaks again, you have my permission to activate the voice dampener on his restraints." One of the security officers nodded and adjusted a control on Holt's restraint collar. Holt opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. His face turned an even deeper shade of red. Captain Ross approached Violet slowly, her hands visible and open. She stopped several feet away and spoke in a respectful tone. "I am Captain Elizabeth Ross of the human vessel Aurora. On behalf of humanity and the Galactic Council, I apologize for what has been done to you. This should never have happened." Violet watched the captain carefully. After a moment, she looked at Jake. He gave her an encouraging nod. Violet seemed to make a decision. She lowered her head slightly in what could only be a gesture of acknowledgement. Captain Ross's expression softened. "She understands. Mr. Brennan, I need you to tell me everything. Start from the beginning." Jake explained how he had found the hidden room while tracking a coolant leak. He described Violet's condition, the chains, the freezing temperature, and the empty food dispensers. He told the captain about Lisa's research into the Draconis species and their protected status. As Jake spoke, Lisa arrived with her datapad. She provided Captain Ross with copies of all the evidence they had gathered. The encrypted communications, the financial records, the testimony from crew members, everything. Captain Ross reviewed the information carefully. Her face remained calm, but Jake could see anger in her eyes. "This is comprehensive. Commander Holt has been running an illegal smuggling operation under my command for months, possibly years. He has violated dozens of laws, both human and galactic." She turned to the security officers. "Take him to the brig. Maximum security cell. No visitors, no communications. I'll contact the Galactic Council enforcers to arrange transfer to their custody." As Holt was led away, he managed to twist around and glare at Jake. Even without words, his expression promised revenge. Jake met his eyes steadily and did not look away until Holt was out of sight. Captain Ross turned back to Violet and Jake. "Now, we need to address the immediate situation. This being is pregnant and will give birth soon. She needs proper medical care from specialists who understand her species. I've already contacted the Xenobiology Institute on Station 12, Lisa said. They have experts in Draconis physiology. They can be here within a few hours. Make it happen, Captain Ross ordered. She looked at Violet again. You've been through a terrible ordeal. I promise you that we will do everything in our power to help you recover and to ensure your children are born safely. The translation device picked up Violet's response. This human helped me. Jake, he saved my life. Captain Ross looked at Jake with new respect. Yes, he did. Mr. Brennan, you showed extraordinary courage and compassion. You also violated about a dozen regulations, broke into a secured area, activated an emergency lockdown without authorization, and technically stole what was classified as cargo. Jake felt his stomach sink. Yes, Captain, I understand. However, Ross continued, and a slight smile touched her lips. Sometimes doing the right thing requires breaking bad rules. You saw a living being in distress and took action to save her. That demonstrates the kind of character I want in my crew. There will be no disciplinary action. In fact, I'm recommending you for a commendation from the Galactic Council. Jake felt like he could breathe again. Thank you, Captain. Don't thank me yet. You've taken responsibility for this being's welfare. That's not a small commitment. Are you prepared to see this through? Jake looked at Violet. She was watching him with those intelligent eyes, and he could see the trust there. Yes, Captain. Whatever she needs. Within 3 hours, the xenobiology team arrived. Dr. Helen Price was the lead specialist, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and decades of experience with non-human species. She examined Violet thoroughly while speaking to her in a calm, reassuring voice. Given what she's been through, her condition is remarkable, Dr. Price announced. She's malnourished and was severely dehydrated, but Mr. Brennan's quick action prevented permanent damage. The clutch is viable. I estimate she will lay her eggs within the next week. Clutch? Jake asked. Draconis lay eggs, Dr. Price explained, usually between 2 and 4 at a time. The eggs will need careful incubation for about 3 months before hatching. Jake felt the weight of that responsibility. He was not just protecting Violet. He was protecting her children, too. Over the next few days, the Aurora became a very different place. Captain Ross ordered a complete investigation into Holt's activities. 3 other officers were arrested for their involvement in the smuggling ring. The ship's security protocols were completely overhauled, and word spread quickly among the crew about what Jake had done. Some crew members thought he was crazy for risking his career. Others thought he was a hero. Jake did not care about either opinion. He was too busy taking care of Violet. Dr. Price and her team set up a proper medical facility in the hangar. They brought in sophisticated monitoring equipment, climate controls, and specialized nutrition supplements. Violet tolerated their presence, but it was clear she preferred Jake. She wanted him nearby constantly. She's bonded with you, Dr. Price explained one evening. In Draconis culture, the one who saves a life becomes part of that person's family. You're not just her rescuer, Jake. You're her clutch guardian now. That's a sacred role in their society. Jake sat next to Violet, who had her head resting on the floor near him. He gently touched her scales. I don't know anything about being a clutch guardian. You'll learn, Dr. Price said with a smile. And honestly, you're doing fine already. The most important thing is that you care. That comes through loud and clear. The translation device had been upgraded to provide better communication. Violet could now form simple sentences that Jake could understand. She told him bits and pieces about her life before the capture. She had lived on the sanctuary world with her mate and her extended family. She had been visiting a trading station when Holt's people had attacked. They had used stun weapons and gas. She had woken up in chains. My mate, she said one night, her voice full of sadness. He does not know where I am. He thinks I am dead. Jake felt his heart break for her. We'll find a way to contact him. I promise. Dr. Price had already reached out to the Draconis embassy through the Galactic Council. Messages had been sent to the sanctuary world, but it would take time for communications to travel that far. In the meantime, all they could do was wait and keep Violet safe. On the 5th day after Holt's arrest, Captain Ross called Jake to her office. When he arrived, he found the captain sitting with 2 visitors. They wore the silver and blue uniforms of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division. Mr. Brennan, these are Enforcers Cole and Martinez. They have some news about Commander Holt's case. Enforcer Cole, a tall man with dark skin and serious eyes, spoke first. Mr. Brennan, thanks to the evidence you and Ms. Martinez gathered, we've been able to dismantle an entire smuggling network. Holt was just one part of a much larger operation. We've made 17 arrests across 4 systems. You've done a great service to the galaxy. What will happen to Holt? Jake asked. He's facing multiple charges under both human and galactic law, Enforcer Martinez said. She was a shorter woman with sharp features. Trafficking in protected species, attempted murder, corruption, smuggling. The morning of the call with the Draconis government, Jake showered, put on his cleanest work clothes, and tried to calm his nerves. Captain Ross had set up a secure communication link in her conference room. When Jake arrived, he found the captain, Dr. Price, Lisa, and 3 holographic projections waiting. The holograms showed 3 Draconis elders. They were magnificent beings larger than Violet, with scales that gleamed gold, silver, and deep green. Their eyes held the weight of centuries of wisdom. The eldest, whose scales were the color of polished gold, spoke first. The translator converted his words into English. I am Elder Kelmar. We speak for the Draconis people. You are Jake Brennan? Yes, sir, Jake said, trying not to sound nervous. You saved one of our daughters, Violet, maid of Theron, carrier of new life. She was taken from us. We thought her dead. You gave her back to us. I just did what anyone should do, Jake said. But not what everyone would do, another elder said. Her scales were silver like moonlight. You risked much. You broke your own people's rules. You stood against corruption and cruelty. This is not common. This is exceptional. The third elder, whose green scales reminded Jake of deep forests, leaned forward. The Draconis do not forget such acts. You are named Clutch Guardian to Violet and her offspring. This is a high honor among our people. It makes you family. Jake glanced at Violet, who was watching the communication with intense interest. I'm honored, truly, but I don't really understand what that means. Elder Kelmar explained. A Clutch Guardian is one who protects the young and ensures their safety. In ancient times, when our people faced great dangers, warriors would serve as guardians to breeding pairs. The tradition continues. You saved Violet when she was most vulnerable. You protected her clutch. Therefore, you are guardian. We have a request, the Silver Elder said. We wish for Violet to return to the sanctuary world. Her mate grieves. Her family waits. She should be home when her eggs hatch. Jake felt a sharp pain in his chest. Of course Violet should go home, but the thought of never seeing her again hurt more than he expected. Yes, absolutely. She should be with her family. There is more to this request, Elder Kelmar continued. We wish for you to accompany her, to see her settled, to meet her family and her people. And then if you are willing, to remain. Remain? Jake was confused. We need a liaison, the Green Elder explained. Someone who understands both humans and Draconis. Someone who can help our peoples work together. We have observed humans for many years. Some are cruel, like the one who hurt Violet. But others, like you, are capable of great compassion. We wish to build bridges with your kind. You could help us do this. Jake looked at Captain Ross, who gave him a small nod. The decision was his to make. Can I think about it? Jake asked. Of course, Elder Kelmar said. We understand this is a large decision. Consider carefully. But know that you would be welcome among us. You would have a home on our world for as long as you wished. After the call ended, Jake sat in silence. Lisa put a hand on his shoulder. That's quite an offer. It's insane, Jake said. I'm just a mechanic. What do I know about diplomacy or cultural liaison work? You know the most important thing, Captain Ross said. You know how to see others as people, regardless of their appearance. That's more valuable than any amount of training. What about my job here? What about the Aurora? Captain Ross smiled. Jake, you've served on this ship for 5 years. You've been an excellent mechanic. But I think your path is leading somewhere else now. If you want to take this opportunity, you have my full support, and you'll always have a place here if you ever want to come back. Jake walked back to the hangar in a daze. Violet sensed his mood immediately. Spoke to elders? Yeah. They asked you to come home with me? How did you know? I asked them to, Violet said simply. I want you there. My mate wants to meet you. My family wants to thank you. And my children, they should know their guardian. Jake sat down next to her. I don't know if I'm the right person for this. You are exactly right person, Violet said firmly. You have kind heart. You have brave spirit. You have strong sense of right and wrong. These things make good guardian. Make good friend. Over the next 2 days, Jake wrestled with the decision. He talked to Lisa, who encouraged him to go. He talked to other crew members. He even talked to Captain Ross again. Everyone told him the same thing. This was an opportunity that came once in a lifetime. On the 3rd day, Violet's contractions began. Dr. Price had been monitoring Violet closely, and she knew the signs. It's time, she announced. She's going into labor. Jake's nervousness about his future instantly vanished. All that mattered now was helping Violet through this. He stayed by her side constantly, just as he had promised. Dr. Price and her team monitored everything, but they let Jake remain close. Violet wanted him there. The labor lasted 14 hours. It was the longest 14 hours of Jake's life. Violet was in pain, and there was little he could do except be present and offer comfort. He talked to her constantly, his voice low and steady. You're doing great. You're so strong. Just a little more. Your babies are almost here. Violet gripped Jake's hand with one clawed foot. Her grip was tight enough to hurt, but Jake did not complain. He just held on and kept talking. Think about holding your children. Think about your mate seeing them for the first time. Think about flying with them over the sanctuary world. You can do this, Violet. I know you can. Finally, as the sun rose on a new day, Violet laid her first egg. It was the size of a large melon, with a shell that gleamed like an opal. Colors swirled across its surface, beautiful and mesmerizing. Dr. Price carefully took the egg and placed it in a special incubation unit that had been prepared. "One down," she said with a smile. 2 hours later, the second egg came. Then after another hour, the third. 3 perfect eggs, all healthy and strong. Violet was exhausted. Her breathing was labored and her eyes were half closed. But when Dr. Price brought the eggs close so Violet could see them, her entire body seemed to relax. She made a sound, a melodic trill that the translator interpreted as joy. "My children," she whispered. "They are safe." "They're beautiful," Jake said, and he meant it. He could see movement inside the translucent shells. Tiny forms shifting and growing. Dr. Price was beaming. "All 3 eggs are viable. The embryos are developing normally. With proper incubation, they should hatch in approximately 3 months. Violet, you've done wonderfully." Violet looked at Jake and her eyes were full of emotion. "Thank you, Clutch Guardian. You kept your promise. You kept us safe." Jake felt tears on his face. "I'll always keep you safe, always." Over the next week, Violet recovered her strength. The eggs remained in the incubation units, carefully monitored around the clock. Dr. Price showed Jake how to check the temperature, humidity, and other vital factors. He learned quickly, asking questions and taking notes. One evening, as Jake sat watching the eggs, he made his decision. He pulled out his communicator and called Captain Ross. "Captain, I've decided. I want to accept the Draconis offer." "I want to go to the sanctuary world," Ross smiled. "I thought you might. I've already started the paperwork for your transfer. You'll officially resign from the Aurora crew and accept a position as human Draconis liaison through the Galactic Council. The pay is actually better than what you're making now." "I don't care about the pay," Jake said honestly. "I know you don't. That's part of why you're perfect for this job." The arrangements took 2 weeks to finalize. A Galactic Council transport ship would arrive to take Violet, her eggs, and Jake to the sanctuary world. In the meantime, Jake had to pack his life into a few bags and say goodbye to the people he had worked with for 5 years. Lisa cried when he told her. "I'm going to miss you so much." "I'll miss you too," Jake said, hugging her tightly. "But you can visit. The sanctuary world accepts visitors." "I will," Lisa promised. "I want to see those eggs hatch." On the day of departure, half the crew came to see them off. Captain Ross personally escorted Jake and Violet to the docking bay where the council transport waited. The ship was beautiful, sleek and silver, designed specifically for transporting delicate cargo and important passengers. "Mr. Brennan," Captain Ross said formally, "it has been an honor serving with you." "The honor was mine, Captain." Ross dropped the formality and smiled. "Take care of yourself, Jake, and take care of her. The galaxy needs more people like you." Violet was loaded onto the transport first, along with her eggs in their portable incubation units. Jake followed, carrying his few belongings. As the ship's doors closed, he looked back at the Aurora one last time. It had been his home for 5 years. Now he was leaving it behind for something new, something unknown. "Nervous?" Violet asked as the ship lifted off. "A little," Jake admitted. "I am too," Violet said, "but I am also happy. I am going home, and you are coming with me." Jake sat next to the incubation units, watching the tiny forms moving inside the eggs. "Your children are going to grow up in a better world than the one you were taken from." "I'll make sure of it." "I know," Violet said. "You are good, Guardian. The best." The transport ship jumped to faster-than-light travel and Station 12 disappeared behind them. Ahead lay the sanctuary world, a new life, and a future that Jake could never have imagined when he had broken down that door in the darkness. The journey to the sanctuary world took 2 weeks. The council transport was comfortable, with quarters for Jake and a special climate-controlled chamber for Violet and her eggs. Jake spent his time learning everything he could about Draconis culture, language, and customs. Dr. Price had come along as a medical advisor. She taught Jake how to care for the eggs properly, and what signs to watch for as they developed. Each day, Jake checked the temperature and humidity levels. Each day, he watched the tiny forms inside grow bigger and stronger. Violet was patient with Jake's endless questions. She told him about her home, about the mountains where her people lived, about the traditions and ceremonies that marked important moments in Draconis life. She taught him proper greetings, respectful gestures, and which topics were considered polite conversation. "You worry too much," Violet said one evening. "My people will like you. You saved me. That is all they need to know." "I want to make a good impression," Jake said. "I want them to see that humans can be trusted." "Then just be yourself," Violet said simply. "You are good human. That will show." On the 14th day, the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel and Jake got his first look at the sanctuary world. He stood at the viewport, his breath catching in his throat. The planet was stunningly beautiful. Vast mountain ranges stretched across the continents, their peaks touching the clouds. Crystal-clear lakes reflected the light of twin suns. Forests glowed with bioluminescent plants, creating a soft radiance even in daylight. And everywhere, dragons flew through the skies. There were hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. They soared on thermal currents, their scales catching the sunlight in every color imaginable. Some flew alone, others in pairs or family groups. It was the most magnificent sight Jake had ever seen. "Home," Violet whispered beside him. Her voice was filled with emotion. "I did not think I would ever see it again." The transport landed on a wide platform carved from the mountainside. As the doors opened, Jake saw a welcoming committee waiting. At the front stood a dragon even larger than Violet, with scales of deep blue and silver. His eyes were fixed on the ship's entrance, his body tense with anticipation. "Theron," Violet said. "My mate." As soon as Violet emerged from the ship, Theron rushed forward. The two dragons entwined their necks together, making sounds that needed no translation. It was reunion, joy, relief, and love all expressed in one moment. Jake hung back, not wanting to intrude. Dr. Price stood beside him with a smile. "That's what we worked for," she said quietly. That moment right there. The 3 Draconis elders Jake had spoken to before were also present, along with dozens of other dragons. Young ones, old ones, families with hatchlings. They had all come to welcome Violet home. After several minutes, Violet and Theron separated. Theron turned to look at Jake. The dragon was imposing, easily 15 feet long with powerful muscles and sharp intelligence in his eyes. He approached Jake slowly. Jake stood his ground, though his heart was pounding. He remembered what Violet had taught him and placed his right hand over his heart in the gesture of respectful greeting. Theron studied Jake for a long moment. Then he lowered his head and touched it gently to Jake's shoulder. The translator on Jake's belt spoke. "You saved my mate. You protected my children when I could not. I owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You are family now. You are brother." Jake felt overwhelmed. "I just did what was right." "Exactly," Theron said. "And that makes you rare and precious. Welcome to our home, Jake Brennan. Welcome to our family." The other dragons approached, each offering their own greetings and thanks. Jake met parents, siblings, cousins, and friends. He met elders who shared stories of the old days and younglings who asked endless questions about humans and space travel. By the end of the first hour, Jake's head was spinning. Elder Kelmar eventually rescued him. "Come, young guardian. We have prepared a dwelling for you. You need rest." Jake was given a small house built into the mountainside. It had been specially modified for human needs, with furniture sized appropriately and technology compatible with human equipment. The view from the main window looked out over a valley where dragons soared and played. "This is incredible," Jake said. "It is yours for as long as you wish to stay," Elder Kelmar said. "We hope that will be a very long time. Tomorrow we will begin your training as liaison, but for tonight, rest. You have had a long journey." That night, Jake sat on the balcony of his new home and watched the sun set. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple. Dragons flew in silhouette against the colorful horizon. In the distance, he could hear their songs, melodic and haunting. He thought about the aurora, about his old life, about the random coolant leak that had led him to that hidden door. Everything had changed because he had chosen to investigate, chosen to help, chosen to stand up for what was right. His communicator buzzed. It was a message from Lisa. "Made it okay? How's the new place?" Jake smiled and typed back. "It's beautiful. You have to come visit soon." "I will, promise." "Proud of you, Jake." The next 3 months passed quickly. Jake threw himself into his new role. He learned the Draconis language properly, not just through translators. He studied their history, their art, their philosophy. He helped establish communication protocols between the sanctuary world and human space. He facilitated trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and scientific collaborations. But most importantly, he spent time with Violet and her family. He visited every day, checking on the eggs and helping with their care. Theron became a good friend, teaching Jake about Draconis customs and sharing stories about his life with Violet. The eggs developed beautifully. Jake watched as the shells became thinner, more translucent. He could see detailed forms inside now. Wings, tails, tiny claws. They were ready to hatch. On the 87th day after laying, the first egg began to crack. Jake was there as he had promised he would be. Violet and Theron flanked him on either side. The entire extended family had gathered. The air was filled with anticipation. The crack widened. A tiny snout pushed through. Then a claw. The hatchling struggled and fought, breaking free of the shell that had protected it. Finally, with a triumphant chirp, it emerged. The baby dragon was no bigger than a house cat. Its scales were still soft and pale, not yet showing their true colors. It looked around with wide, curious eyes. Then it saw Jake. The hatchling stumbled forward on unsteady legs and climbed directly onto Jake's lap. It curled up there, chirping softly, and closed its eyes. "It has chosen you," Theron said quietly. "It knows you are guardian." Within an hour, all 3 eggs had hatched. 2 females and 1 male. They were perfect, healthy, and full of energy. When they were not sleeping, they were exploring, playing, and getting into everything they could reach. Violet named them in a ceremony that evening. The names were long and musical in Draconis, but they translated roughly to hope, freedom, and gift. Jake called them Hope, Free, and Gift for short. The hatchlings bonded strongly with Jake. Whenever he visited, they would rush to him, climbing on him, chirping for attention. Violet said it was because they could sense that he had protected them even before they were born. As the hatchlings grew, Jake taught them words in both English and Draconis. He played games with them, took them on walks through the mountains, and kept them out of trouble when their curiosity led them into mischief. Other Draconis families began to seek Jake out. They wanted to meet the human who had saved Violet. They wanted to learn about human culture. Young dragons especially were fascinated by Jake, following him around and asking endless questions. Jake's work as a liaison flourished. He helped arrange the first formal diplomatic mission between humans and Draconis. He facilitated a student exchange program where young humans and young Draconis could learn from each other. He worked with scientists from both species to study shared challenges like disease and climate change. But his favorite times were still the quiet evenings spent with Violet's family. Watching the hatchlings learn to fly, seeing them discover their colors as their scales hardened, teaching them about the wider galaxy. One evening, almost a year after his arrival, Jake sat on the same cliff where he had sat that first night. Violet settled beside him, her 3 younglings tumbling over each other nearby. Theron joined them, stretching his wings. "Do you ever regret your choice?" Violet asked. "Leaving your old life behind?" Jake thought about it honestly. "Sometimes I miss certain things. The Aurora, my friends there, the simplicity of just being a mechanic. But regret? Never. This is where I'm supposed to be." "You have changed many lives," Theron said, "not just ours. You have helped our peoples understand each other. You have built bridges where there were none." "I think of that cell sometimes," Violet said softly. "How cold it was. How hopeless I felt. I was certain I would die there, that my eggs would die with me. But you didn't," Jake said. "You survived. You fought. And look at them now, they watch the younglings play. Hope was teaching Gift how to catch the wind currents. Free was exploring a nearby rock formation with fearless curiosity. Their scales had developed their full colors now. Hope's were pale gold like sunrise. Free's were emerald green. Gift's were a mix of his parents' colors. Blue and purple swirled together. They will grow up in a world where humans and Draconis are friends.